Do you ever feel stuck in your life or your leadership? I know I do. In fact, I look back to a time maybe 10, 15 years ago where my life felt like it had curled up into a question mark. I wasn't really sure about some of the things I had going on. Am I supposed to be doing this? Am I supposed to be doing something else? I think this happens to all of us. And I want to just remind you, if you feel stuck right now, that there's some hope for you. You don't have to stay stuck. That's the cool part. I remember when I was a kid, we used to go four-wheel drive mudding in vehicles. Now, if you're not from the country like I am, you may not have been in a four-wheel drive vehicle in the mud before and gotten stuck. And here's what happens when you get stuck. You're doing everything you can, because sometimes you're not supposed to even be there. Your mom might not know about it. And you get stuck and you're like, what do I do? And my granddad, he taught me an important lesson. It was this: when you get stuck, the dumbest thing in the world you can do is push the accelerator harder on the vehicle that you're driving. Think about it. If you push harder when you're stuck in the mud, it just throws mud on everybody around the situation. If you're smart though, my granddad said, you're going to find rocks, sticks, anything you can to create some traction. And if you can create traction, the cool thing is you barely push the accelerator and it'll come right out. Now, I found out the best thing is if your buddy has a chain and he's got another truck and he can pull you out, that's really good. But sometimes in our life or our leadership, we get stuck and we think if we just try harder, we push harder, it's going to make things better. And that typically doesn't happen. It just sometimes makes things messy for everybody around us. And so I want to just encourage you today that you're not hopeless if you're in a situation that doesn't feel hopeful at the moment. There really is some hope for you today. And the amazing thing is we've got a little formula that you can apply this to your life and you can create traction, be back to a better spot real quick. Now, let me remind you of a couple things. First of all, you don't get stuck on purpose. Nobody's in a situation right now that's a hard situation and you thought going in, I'm going to put myself in this situation because it'll be really hard and it'll be uncomfortable and I won't like it. That typically doesn't happen. We're typically entering a situation, we're pretty excited. In fact, there's some phases that happen in our journey, and the excitement phase is the first phase. Think about any relationship you get into, a new relationship, maybe even the person you're married to now. When you first met them, there was an excitement phase. You were fired up about that. Same thing for your job. When you entered this job, and maybe that's the place where you feel stuck right now, maybe in that relationship, or maybe it's in your career, and you never would have believed that it was possible to feel stuck when you first started out. There's an excitement phase. And yet what happens pretty quickly, if you take even a job that you don't know exactly what you're doing or this is new for you, you're going to enter the second phase, which is the fundamental phase. You realize, I don't know what I'm doing. And so you got to learn how to navigate the relationship, learn how to navigate the job, whatever you got going on. And so we pick up on these fundamentals, we start growing, we get a little better. And finally, we get to this point where we actually can begin to contribute at work or contribute in the relationship, and things are harmonious and they work out and we're rocking along and things are great. And we think it just doesn't get better than this. I mean, you know, if you're in a great relationship, there's really not a lot that's better than that. Or if you're in a great career and you go to work every day and you feel like this is awesome and you're doing what you love to do with the people that you love, I mean, there's nothing much that's better than that. And yet something happens. It's crazy. Sometimes we label it different ways. We call it a midlife crisis or a mid-career, whatever is going on. It's just not right. And we labeled it, I say we because my friend Dan Webster and I wrote a book about this called Unstuck, actually. And we labeled it as a stop sign. There's a point where we hit this stop sign in our life or our leadership, our relationship. We get to this point where this is not working. This is not what I thought it was going to be. I thought this was going to be great. And now I'm entering what we would call the misery phase. The misery phase is where we become bored maybe, or tired, or we're disillusioned. Sometimes this happens. We're fatigued and it's just not working the way we thought it was. And that can be drudgery. There's an author named Henry Nouwen who once said, the courageous leader is not the one who blazes a trail into the future. The courageous leader is actually the one who blazes a trail into his or her own heart. It's a place where when we hit that stop sign and we hit that misery phase, we have a couple of choices. We can either do something stupid, destructive habits, patterns of behavior, midlife crisis, go get a little red sports car, have an affair, all these kind of crazy things that you hear. We can medicate it with a substance, and yet those things never work. That's not going to solve our issue. If we go into our own heart, though, we have a chance to experience renewal. And if you're here today and you're listening to this and you're in this place where you're stuck, I want to give you a little formula that I think can help you. This is what we call the traction formula. Let me lay it out for you real quickly. And I think you can just take a simple step today and you can be in a better place real fast. So here it is. The first thing is we want to do what we call introspection. Introspection. We hear the word inspection all the time. There are government inspections and regulations and all kinds of things. but nobody's ever talking about introspection. That's when we inspect on the inside. What's really going on with you? Where are you today? What is it that's got you stuck? And if you can name that, you have a chance to begin to make progress. But if you don't know you're stuck, or if you don't admit you're stuck, you're going to have a hard time making progress. The second thing you want to do is not just introspect, but you want to redirect. It's introspection plus redirection. Redirection is when we realize we're going the wrong way and we actually turn the car around. If you're driving, you're going east and you know you're supposed to be going west, you realize that you're on the wrong road, you're going to turn it around. It's great when you're in a car and there's a GPS and the thing redirects us, right? Self-leadership is about redirecting your own life, your own story, your own journey. You don't have to go in the wrong direction. You don't have to make the wrong choice. You really can redirect. And yet that's not enough. It's not enough to introspect and redirect. We actually, if we're not careful, we'll realize we're going the wrong way and we'll just take our foot off the gas. We see this happen all the time. People will disengage. They're not fully bringing their heart to their work or not really leaned into that relationship. They're there without being there. I want to remind you that you've got to redirect, but again, you got to do one more thing. You got to take action. It's introspection plus redirection plus action. You actually have to put your foot on the gas and you got to push the accelerator and begin to make progress back toward where you want to be. When my kids were young, I always told them the longer you stay on the wrong road, the further you get from where you want to be. If you really want to make progress, you're going to have to put your foot on the gas and you're going to have to take action toward what's right. And so today, I want to encourage you to take this little formula and do some introspection. Where are you right now? What's really going on? You don't have to stay where you are, but you do have to start there. I want to encourage you to admit what's going on, admit where you're stuck, and then begin to redirect and maybe even put down some practices or just choose one thing that you could do differently. Different is always going to require us to make a different choice, right? I'll say it that way. Better is always going to be different. Better is going to require us to make a change. And so what is that one area where you say, I'm going to start here. I'm just going to take one little baby step. And here's the cool thing about baby steps. Every time you take one, you get closer to where you want to go. You don't have to take big giant steps. You'll just take a baby step toward what's right. That's the action part. When you redirect, what's one thing you're going to do to take you toward where you want to be? Introspection plus redirection plus action actually will create traction every single time. And so today it can be just that simple to admit where you're stuck, to make a decision in your mind, in your heart, I'm not going to do that anymore, to take a step toward where you want to be, take action, and then traction begins to happen. And here's what I've found in my own journey is when you understand the excitement and the fundamentals and contribution, then you hit that stop sign and you get miserable enough and you begin to make these decisions to create traction again. Something really cool happens. You get on the other side of it. It's what we call the wisdom phase. You learn as you get older and you get more experience and you struggle and you get unstuck over and over again. You learn that you don't have to do some of those things again. And there are ways that you can lead yourself along the way. Let's just start with this traction formula. I really do believe it is the key for you getting unstuck. Think about all the people around you right now. If you're pushing harder, trying harder, you're making a mess, mud's flying everywhere. That's not what we want. We want to leave a legacy. We want to encourage the people around us to take steps and have great lives themselves. We can't do that unless we lead ourselves well. So if you're going to be the leader that you're capable of being, if you're going to be the person in the relationship that you really were destined to be, you got to live with traction. You can't just go through the motions and expect to have intimacy and vibrance and really even production when you think about it at work. It's just not going to happen. So we can do some things to make sure that we're living with traction. I hope you will live unstuck. In fact, I would encourage you to get a copy of the book. If you've not done so, if you don't know about Unstuck, this is the book we wrote. You can get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you get your books. Unstuck, Randy Gravett, Dan Webster. Hope you'll check that out. The cool thing about the book, it's got a story in the beginning that kind of walks us through this formula that we've talked about today, but it also has a blueprint in the back to help you work through these exercises and do some things to get you back on track so you can live with traction like you were born to do. There really is greatness in you. We don't want to spend any days stuck that we don't have to. Go find traction. It's available to you. Unstuck will help you get there. All right. Love you guys. Remember, the best leaders lead every day.